Alrighty. Hello, everybody, and welcome in and welcome back to another episode of the Ryan's Ramble podcast. My name is Ryan Bonnell. I'm your host here on the Frogs of War Network. If you're unfamiliar with what this podcast is, essentially, this is your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. College football all throughout the fall. Then we're going to hit college basketball later on. But for now, football, and more football. My name's Ryan Bonnell. If you're unfamiliar with me, I am an associate editor over at Frogs of War. Been working there for just over a year now. I'm a senior at TCU, so I love giving my gambling picks. I love doing this podcast. Just want to give a shout out to the Frogs of War family for this opportunity to do this. But before we do get started, since this is a gambling podcast, I do need to say that this is for entertainment purposes only. The sports betting is not legal in the state of Texas. Frogs of War does not condone or recommend it. What you do with your own money in your free time is your business, but I am not a financial advisor, so do not take this as financial advice. I just need to get that out of the way and say that. But we have had a hell of a last few weeks on our picks. We have gone 26-12, I think it is. But before we talk about last week, let's talk about TCU football just a tad. They're 2-2 right now, 4 straight home games to open the season, 2 losses to rivals. It is not exactly what you want to see as a Horned Frog fan, but we got to get at least one win against the Texas school this weekend. We play Tech in Lubbock. Weird things happen at night in Lubbock, so I don't know. Part of me feels confident that we should beat them, but Tech just beat West Virginia last week, which that was very surprising to me. I thought West Virginia, they were 7-point favorites in that one, the spread, and I thought that was a lock, so that surprised me, especially considering Henry Columbi is now the starting quarterback again with Tyler Show out. So all we need to do, though, I've said this every episode, if we just continue to feed Zach, if we just give Zach the ball, more than 15 carries a game, if you're listening, Gary, I love you, but please give Zach the ball more. I'm sure that he's conditioned enough to handle it. He's not going to get tired every 2 plays he runs. But anyway, we're not here to gallivant on the what ifs, the what could be's of TCU's football season. We're here to talk about college football as a whole, make some picks, find some winners, and have fun while doing it. So first, before we get into any picks, let's talk about what we learned last week. I always like to open my episodes by doing this. It's kind of the key points that I take away from each weekend and that I use to apply to my future picks, my future lines, everything of that sort. So first thing we learned last week in college football is that Georgia's defense is legit beyond belief. Like, they are absolutely absurd. They gave up 0 points against number 8 Arkansas in a top 10 matchup. And they're now giving up an average of, I think it is 4.6 points per game. That's insane. And they're now in their conference schedule, so that's even more impressive. I've gone back and forth on Georgia this year, honestly. I originally said that they were going to choke. Even last week, I think I said that they're going to find a way to choke a game at some point in this season. But based on the looks of it, Georgia is a playoff team right now, without a doubt. Their defense is just, JT Daniels has been playing all right. I don't think he's as Heisman worthy as everybody said he was in the preseason, but he's still a great quarterback nonetheless. And he is good enough to lead them to the playoffs, especially with the defense. Kirby Smart's done a hell of a job. So I don't know what to do with Georgia going forward, because I thought Arkansas was a lock last week. That's one of my losses on last week's card. But we'll get into last week's card in a second. We'll review it. But next up on what we learned is Cincinnati and BYU out of the group of 5. Well, BYU independent. But anyway, they may both have playoff arguments come the end of the season. So BYU has 2 tough games left on their schedule. They're undefeated right now. They've got to play at Baylor and at USC. Other than that, they should win every game. They've got Boise State this weekend, which is, you could say that's a tough game, but the Broncos are 2-3 right now, so BYU should be able to handle that. And then you look at Cincy. They just beat Notre Dame. They beat Indiana in a big game, even though the Hoosiers don't look that great this season. With Penix Jr., they kind of flopped. But anyway, they've won their big games, and they've looked good while doing so. They're on path to go 12-0. All they have to do is beat SMU and UCF both at home, and UCF just lost to a bad Navy team. So that was very surprising. Probably the most shocking upset of the weekend. But regardless, look out for BYU and Cincinnati. I really really hope the Bearcats go 12-0 and get into the playoff. Even if the Big 12 beats itself up come the end of the year and we don't get a playoff spot for our conference, we can root for Cincinnati now as our allies because they're coming in a few years. But I just really want to see the little guys get a shot. And I think Cincinnati, if they go 12-0 with their resume, they deserve it. And they have a legit Heisman contender. They have one of the hottest coaches in the country. Like, why not give them a shot? I could go on and on about putting Cincinnati in the playoffs forever. Also, bear with me, guys. I woke up this morning feeling a little congested, so I got to drink some water every now and then. If you hear me pause abruptly, that is why. But anyway, Classic Pac-12 is back. That is another thing we learned this weekend. It seems like nobody wants to make the playoffs, right? We talked Oregon was a legitimate contender. They looked like a legitimate contender with C.J. Verdell and Anthony Brown. But now C.J. Verdell just suffered a season-ending injury, which is a huge blow. They just got upset by Stanford after Stanford at one point in the game had literally a 1.8% chance to win, according to the ESPN, power index thing. I don't know what it's called. But anyway, ridiculous upset. That was crazy. And UCLA, too. They were one of the other guys. They were undefeated in conference play at this point. Their only loss was Fresno State. And they just got beat by what was it, 20 points to Arizona State at home. And also that Fresno State team just lost this weekend, so that makes UCLA look a little worse. I don't know. Pac-12 seems like it's going to just beat each other up, and their best team is going to come out 9-3, maybe 10-2 into the conference championship. Who knows at this point? We'll see, because I really thought Oregon would have been fine, but without C.J. Verdell, that makes me question a lot of things. So next up, out of the SEC, we learned that Kentucky might actually be a dark horse out of the SEC East, which, as weird as that sounds, the Wildcats are actually a good football team. I mean, I know historically they're all basketball, except for, that their only famous thing is the Bluegrass Miracle in football. But, hey, they've turned this program around, and this year they're here to prove it. They're 5-0 right now. They just upset Florida, who, mind you, a lot of people, including myself, had high hopes for Florida after they played a 2-point game against Bama. So they beat a good Florida team. Even though they had home field advantage, that's still a big, big, big win. They won by 7 points. Part of it may be attributed to this huge blocked field goal that they returned for a touchdown in the third quarter. Very low-scoring game, but that's what Kentucky does. They play slow, paced. They are a super defensive-minded team. One of the top 10 defenses actually in the country right now, all around. So Kentucky, I hope to see Kentucky spice things up out of the SEC East. Could you imagine if it's like Bama and Kentucky in the SEC championship? I mean, Bama will win that game by like 30, but it doesn't matter. I still want to see Kentucky in there. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm in the minority there. All right, next up, Breece Hall out of the Big 12. Breece Hall, I've talked about him in the preseason. I've always thought he's one of the best running backs in the country. Definitely one of the best in the Big 12. I think if you look at the Big 12 running backs with Zach Evans, Bijan Robinson, and Breece Hall, those are really, honestly, three of the top guys nationwide, and they're all in the Big 12. But Breece Hall, we learned that he is still really good at football, and he deserves more attention. He has 413 yards and 7 total touchdowns in the last 3 games, and he has not been getting enough attention. So there really isn't much more to say about that. I just wanted to give some love to Breece Hall because I really like him as a player. I think he's going to do phenomenal things in his career in the NFL. He will probably translate well, but I just wanted to say that he needs more attention. The media needs to talk about Breece Hall again. But I wouldn't mind if everybody started talking about Zach Evans. That's okay with me too, because Zach Evans is chef's kiss. Beautiful. All right. And then staying in the state of Iowa, not Iowa State, though. Iowa, the Hawkeyes, their defense. Last week, one thing we learned was that the Hawkeyes offense might be a kryptonite. This week, we learned that the Hawkeyes defense is their best offense. They forced 7 turnovers against Tagovailoa and the Maryland Terrapins in a huge game where a lot of people thought that Iowa was on upset alert. They were only 3-point favorites, which we picked, by the way. Got it, But and they came out and just dominated the entire game. It wasn't even close. I love what I'm seeing from the Hawkeyes. They have another huge game this week, and I do have a pick on that game against Penn State. So stay tuned. That's coming later in the episode. But staying in the Big Ten, last thing we learned from the last weekend of college football is that the Big Ten is by far, far and away, the most exciting conference to watch in football right now. Iowa Iowa really has no competition out of the West. Even if they lose this game against Penn State, they still have no competition out of the West. They should be a shoe-in for the championship game. Go ahead and book them. They're going to make the championship game regardless of if they beat Penn State or not. But the Big Ten East, though, absolutely bonkers. 4 of the 7 teams in the division are undefeated. No. Scratch that. Ohio State's not undefeated, but 4 of them are top 11 teams. So that's still absurd. We're going to see some really big matchups in the near future out of the Big Ten East. Yeah, all are undefeated other than Ohio State. And they lost a non-conference game, though. So all of them are currently undefeated within conference play. But this just makes me wonder what kind of horrible what kind of horrible playoff picture debacle could we see transpire come the end of the season. We've seen TCU fans know this best. We've seen, pardon my language, but we've seen the bullshit from the playoff committee. They have bias. They make wrong decisions. They're human. Okay. This isn't the BCS. And with all these Big Ten teams, with Georgia doing well and Bama playing well, it really scares me that we're going to get, 2 Big Ten teams and 2 SEC teams in the playoffs, which, who knows? At the end of the season, that might be the best bet. This has kind of been chaotic so far. Look at Clemson. Clemson has 2 losses. Who would have thought that would have happened in the beginning of the year? So, never know. But that wraps up what we learned last week. Now, before we get into this week's card, I know that's what you're waiting for, or at least that's what I'm waiting to get into. But I got to talk about last week's card because, drum roll, we had another winning week. We went 8-4 last week. The hot streak continues. After starting a rough 10-17, we have bounced back, and we are now 36-29, 26-12 in the last 3 weeks. So overall in the year, I am at a 55.4 win percentage right now. And no matter what happens, of course, this is for fun. This is all for fun. This isn't financial advice, so it doesn't matter if we win. But I want to win, okay? I want to win. This is for pride. This is also because I want to give you guys winning picks. Like, I don't want to give you bad advice if you do follow these picks, that would make my day too. But another conversation. Anyway, about some of my picks last week, we're doing well. We're going to keep riding the confidence into next week, or this weekend, But let's talk about some of those picks that we won and lost last week. So my protest worked. I said I was protesting these ridiculous over-unders in the Bama game. It was set at 80 against Ole Miss, and it finished at 42-21, I think it was. So very comfortable under for me, and that made me my day because I was very terrified considering 4 of the last 5 Bama Ole Miss games have broken 80 points, which is just crazy to think about, especially whenever you think about how good Bama's defense is. Ole Miss always finds a way to score points on them. But that Arkansas game, that's another pick. Talked about it a little bit. Georgia, that was painful to watch. We went 1-1 on picks because we had the under of 49.5 and it scored 37-0. But we also had Arkansas spread of plus 17.5, and woo, they looked really bad. They got exposed. I'm not sure what to think of Arkansas right now. I'm staying away from their plays, their lines for at least the next week or 2. Other than that, though, I dabbled on this in my intro, but Texas Tech, they beat West Virginia outright. That came out of left field. I had West Virginia -4 for the first half. And, of course, I should have bet on the third quarter because the Mountaineers won that 17-0. But Tech won the first half 17-0, and that was one of my losses. But let's not harp on the L's. Let's talk about one of my other wins. Bowling Green is a covering wagon. They are undefeated, 5-0 against the spread at this point in the season. They just covered plus 17 last weekend against Kent State, following a huge upset win against Minnesota. I'm talking 31-point underdog winning outright type of upset. So that one really made my day as well. But the only Debbie Downer about last week, before we move into this week's picks, is we went 1-2 on our tier 1 picks. We've been undefeated the last 2 weeks in our tier 1 picks. That's what we want. We want our most confident picks. They're the most confident picks for a reason. Those are the ones that should be winning more. So we went 1-2, but that's okay. It's bound to happen every now and then. We had Baylor and Oklahoma State. I had the over, and it was way slower than expected. That finished at, 28-14. The Cowboys got the win. Tough game for Baylor. A lot of people thought that was their prove-it game to prove that they were worth a top 25 ranking, and I did not believe they were, and neither did the universe, apparently. So other than that, didn't believe in Arizona State, and I still don't, but they kind of screwed me over because I had UCLA -3 as one of my tier 1 picks, and they blew out UCLA on the road. I still don't believe in Arizona State. We'll talk about that in a little bit because they're on my card as well. But that wraps up the synopsis of last week, what we learned, and last week's picks. Now, let's talk about this week. I honestly am forgetting what week of college football we are in. With NFL and college football being on different weeks, it throws my brain in a headspin every now and then. I think we're on week 5, week 6. I know this is episode 8, I believe, of the podcast. I don't know. My brain's all over the place. It's been a crazy 24 hours, and right after I record this, I'm leaving for the A&M Alabama game, which I'm actually super excited for, even though for the first time, I know you can shun me, you can shame me as a TCU fan, but this is like my first TCU game where I have fully had the capability of attending, and I chose to do something else. But hear me out. I don't know how I feel about that. I say it like it's a bad thing because I feel partially guilty, but just because I've bled purple my whole life, so it feels weird. But I don't know. I feel like I'm never going to have an opportunity to see Alabama play. It's kind of one of those things. I have a buddy that goes to A&M, so I'm meeting up with him. And even though A&M's probably going to get crushed by 30 points, Kyle Field with over 100,000 people, we can hate on A&M as much as we want, but that's a hell of an atmosphere. And I really just kind of have to take the opportunity to experience that. But trust me, I will be in Lubbock in spirit. I will be rooting for the Frogs. And speaking of the Frogs, let's see what the odds makers have set for them this weekend. TCU are -2.5 point favorites to at least whenever I last checked. So I believe that's still the line. It changes, fluctuates every now and then. But TCU are 2.5 point favorites, and the over-under is set at 60. But something about the spread that's interesting is the Frogs have not covered a spread all season. They have 3 losses and a push against Duquesne to open the year. So I would say I'm leaning towards TCU to cover the spread because I would like to think that we're not going to go 2-3. I would like to think that we get a road win. Get the saddle trophy, but I don't know, man. It's been a weird season. So if I'm gonna make a pick, I'm gonna say that the over of 60 is the play. Tech's offense is capable enough to put up 30 points probably on our abysmal defense, unless something turns around. I know Gary Patterson said we're getting a lot of guys like Corey Bethley, George Ellis, a few other guys back from injury. Ooh, excuse me. That was a weird hiccup, but anyway, Noah Daniels and Kyrie Coleman are coming. They're going to be more involved. So maybe we could see something different from the defense. Hopefully we do. But I think the over of 60 is the best play if you want to make a play on this TCU game. As always, though, personally, I stay away from betting on TCU games because, of course, I'm biased. Even if I try and hide all my bias, it's still underlying somewhere in me. And also, it just makes the games less fun. Which is ironic because I'm always the guy that says sports betting makes sports better. It makes sports way more fun. It makes it way more entertaining. But as a fan of a team, I don't want to sit there stressing out the entire game oh my God, I need them to score 7 points by the end of this quarter and then we're on track for this. No, I just want to watch the game. I want to watch my team win. And then if they cover the spread after the game, I'm always I knew it. I knew I should have bet on them. But that's part of being a gambler. It is what it is. Now, that is my recommendation for the TCU play would be 60, the over. But enough about that. Let's get into it. Our card for I already said I forgot what week it is. It's week 5. I hope it's week 5. I don't know. Anyway, this Saturday, tomorrow, because this is going to be published on Friday. So tomorrow, here are my picks. Here's my full card, starting with Tier 3. If you're unfamiliar with the system, Tier 3 are my least confident picks. We work our way up all the way up to Tier 1, where those are my favorite picks, my locks of the weekend. So let's get right into it. Tier 3, starting out, we're going Michigan State -5 at Rutgers. So if you follow, quick little shout out, Stats of War on Twitter, he has pretty cool advanced stats models that have done some pretty accurate predictions in the past. And this gives MSU a 64% chance to win, but the score prediction is exactly at like 5-point difference, but it's like 5.08. And if it's over 5, we ride. All right. So give me Sparty -5. But in all seriousness, Sparty's the better team here. Rutgers, I think the only reason this line is as small as it is because Rutgers played a close game with Michigan. But last week they were 15-point underdogs in Ohio State. A lot of people were picking them to cover that spread, but then they got blown out by 39. I think Michigan State, although I don't know if they should be ranked number 11, I think they are a legitimate top 25 team, maybe around more closer to the 20 range when it's all said and done this year. But yeah, I like Sparty a lot as a Tier 3 pick. I have another pick, actually, that's in Tier 1. So the only reason it's in Tier 3 is, again, because that small spread. Sometimes they make me nervous whenever Vegas has a line completely different than to what I thought it would have been. I would have probably said Michigan State like -7, -8. But again, what do I know? I'm just a degenerate sports gambler. I'm not a genius. Actually, no, I don't even know what kind of people are odds makers or how you get into it, or I don't know, but I'm kind of curious. I feel like that would be a fun job to have, being an odds maker, setting the line, because they know a lot. They do a lot, and they're so ridiculously accurate. It's insane. I could talk about that for days. But next pick on Tier 3 is Alabama. I'm going to this game. I just talked about this. Give me the Crimson Tide -17.5 over A&M on the road. I know this is a huge spread, but it's Alabama. All right. What more do I need to say? It's Alabama. They're currently 2-1 against the spread against Power 5 opponents. Their only loss was to Florida in that 2-point ball game. Meanwhile, A&M is 0-3 against the spread against P5 opponents. So Aggies got exposed last week against Mississippi State in a game that they should have won. That Arkansas loss was explainable, but not necessarily that Mississippi State game. They lost their quarterback early on in the season, which that's going to be a big blow for anybody. And I forget his name, but their current quarterback is just not – he's not ready. You can tell he's not ready to take on this role. He came into a top 10 team that had a lot of expectations going into the year, and it seems like that was just a weight too heavy for his shoulder. And their defense, I will give them credit. The Aggies' defense is still really good, even though they gave up 400 passing yards against Mississippi State. But if they gave up 400 passing yards against Mississippi State, Bryce Young and John Mechie are going to combine for he's going to throw for 200 yards to Mechie alone and probably put up 500 yards, maybe 1 million, who knows. So Bryce Young is much, much, much better than anybody Mississippi State has. And I think he'll probably find a way to torch the Aggies defense, even with the environment. I will say I'm nervous for the first half, even though I usually like those kind of bets for Alabama. But at Kyle Field, man, that atmosphere, I feel like it's going to be rocking in the first quarter. Oh, I can't wait to be there. I am betting this one, so I'm going to be wearing a fake Aggie polo, to fit in with the crowd, but I'll be secretly rooting for Alabama to get this pick to fruition. I actually also have another pick in Tier 3 on that game. I'm going to take the over as well. Over 50.5 in the Bama A&M game. I was tempted to take the Bama team total over 34.5, but I think legitimately Bama might cover this spread themselves. But I'm hoping that because of the hype and the atmosphere and everything, that the Aggies will be able to at least score a touchdown or two. It's going to be hype. It's going to be a hype atmosphere. Points should be scored, I hope. The Alabama offense is averaging, I think, like 40-something points a game. So even with the Aggies' esteemed defense, Bryce Young and co should be able to go to work and put up they might be able to break the over by themselves. So I got Alabama covering the spread and the over in that ball game. Now, this one is a step down from SEC football, but we got New Mexico plus 19.5 at San Diego State. We're going with the Mountain West here, and there really isn't much to explain about this pick other than the fact that it is strictly a system play. So if you're unfamiliar with systems, it's kind of the smart, analytical, nerdy way of going about sports betting where it's been over years. There are certain variables and factors that contribute to this system per se, and it tracks all the data, tracks everything, and makes picks based on which line relates to history and like past lines. So with this spread, it is about road underdogs with low totals. So essentially, in a game where there's a team who's an underdog by double digits or more, and it is a low over-under, which is typically set like under 45 points. And in this one, the over-under is only 42.5. Chances are the favorite will win, but they will not win by that much. If it's expected to be this low scoring of a ball game, I don't know. And also the Lobos are 0-5 against the spread right now. I feel like they're due for a win. Vegas, they even it out somehow. They've got to even it out somehow. So I feel like Lobos are the play here. Follow the system. It has a win percentage, I think, of 61% with like a 20% ROI since like in the last 10 years. So pretty solid system. Got that off the Action Network app. Always use that to track everything. Follow me on there too. If you use that at all, follow me. Just search my full name, Ryan Bunnell, and you can see all my picks I make, not even just my college football picks, if that's your thing, if you fancy that. All right. Now, to round up my Tier 3 picks, we're going Wake Forest at Syracuse, over 57.5. For some reason, I keep loving these orange game totals. I'm 2-1 so far on Syracuse over-under picks, but I like this one again. I'm taking the over. I think the Demon Deacons, Wake Forest, their offense is crazy fast-paced. They've averaged 38.4 points per game at this point in the year, and they gave up 34 points to Louisville on defense last game, which if you're rooting for an over, that's a good sign. You want bad defense, you want points. So I don't think that Wake Forest, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that Syracuse isn't necessarily better than Louisville, but I think their offense is probably on par or most compatible with Louisville compared to Wake Forest's other components. So I feel like Hughes will be able to put up some points. They have that Heisman running back, Sean Tucker, I believe it is, who's been putting up ridiculous numbers. So I was very tempted to make a play at Q's plus 5.5. So that might even be like a last-minute personal play. Stay tuned in the comment section. But I do really like the over of 57.5. But I'm nervous because it moved, actually. I think it might actually be at 59 by the time I'm recording this. But whenever I made all my picks, it was at 57.5. So that's what we're rolling with. Give me the over. All right. We're on to tier 2 now. I need some water. I got all nasally. The show must go on. Whew. Let's get into it. All right. First up on my tier 2, this is my medium level confidence pick. I'm going Stanford plus 13.5 at Arizona State. I talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but I still do not believe Hermie and the Sun Devils. I don't know why, but I still didn't like what I saw in that 20-point win over UCLA. I think UCLA actually showed more bad things than Arizona State did good things. So I think we overestimated the Bruins, and that Fresno State loss makes them look a lot worse now. But looking at Stanford, though, they show up in arguably their 2 biggest games of the season so far. They've showed up and came to play and came away with big upsets on the road at USC and last week at home against Oregon. They've showed up. I mean, nobody had high expectations for Stanford coming into the year, myself included, as nobody really should. They didn't look good. They were a downward trending program, but they've played in big games before, and a lot of them. They know how to handle it, and they've proved it this year. So this is another big game, another big opportunity for them. Arizona State is a ranked team, and although I think Arizona State will probably come away with the win, Stanford plus 13.5 is a very, very big spread. That being said, I will be really, really sad if they end up losing by 14 and it loses by 0.5 points. But alas, we live and we learn. All right. Next up on tier 2, I was very tempted to put this one on my tier 1 picks, but we're going with Virginia Tech +1 versus Notre Dame at home. 90% of the reason I am taking this line is because it is a home game at Lane Stadium, and Virginia Tech is a different. Oh, it's a night game too. So Inner Sandman is going to be bumping. The student section is going to be rocking. Notre Dame's barely going to be able to hear themselves think. Lane Stadium is one of the best atmospheres in the country. And also, I've said this time and time again, and I will continue to repeat it for as long as I need to until everybody in the country understands that Notre Dame are the biggest frauds in the history of college football, and they don't even deserve to be in any sort of playoff conversation ever. Never again. I don't care what kind of recruits they bring in. They can go 12-0 next year. I don't care. Still frauds. Always overrated. Getting me heated. I hate Notre Dame, but they're bad. You should know this by now. They proved it. Not to say that I don't want to sound like I'm discrediting Cincinnati for Notre Dame losing to them last week. Cincinnati's a great football team, played a great game, but Notre Dame really struggled to move the ball, and it exposed a lot of issues for them. So and that was a home game too for them. So now going on the road, this is going to be a really tough task at Lane Stadium. Bring on the Inner Sandman, baby. I can't wait to hear it. Plus, a little bit of sharp action on the Hokies. Virginia Tech is receiving the minority. They're getting 48% of public bets, but at the same time, 74% of the bets are being placed. Oh, I said that wrong. Sorry. 48% of public bets are on VT, while 74% of the money is with VT. So they're getting less of the public bets, but more of the money, which typically means that big, heavy bettors, pro bettors are siding with VT. So I'm going to roll with it. It's a very small spread, +1. I think realistically, they're going to win the game. That's why I'm picking this. That +1 is just the cushion for the odd happening that they lose on a last-second field goal and only lose by 1 point. That'll be a push, and it wouldn't be a loss. So that'd be better than a loss. Take VT +1. I really like that one. Was really tempted to put it in tier 1. It's hard to decide where to put these picks, man. Like I tell you, I always have them all laid out and what I want to pick, but then I have to, and some of them I know for sure. Like I'm like, this one's tier 1. I know that one. But some of them I have to really think like, do I want to put this in tier 3? Because of course I don't want to lose picks, but if I'm going to lose picks, I would rather them be in tier 3 than tier 1. Okay. Just for my credibility's sake. But now I don't have that many tier 2 picks this week. To round it out, I have West Virginia at Baylor over 44 points. Last week, I had the Baylor over. That was one of my losses in tier 1. But West Virginia, they've had surprisingly high-scoring games other than that 23-20 game against Tech, which was another surprising game. But part of me feels like West Virginia's going to win this game. I really wanted I was leaning towards taking West Virginia spread, but I have a better feeling that points are going to be scored in this. It's at McLean Stadium, and for some reason, Baylor combined points are just ridiculous in McLean Stadium compared to their road games. So I don't know. I have a good feeling. The Mountaineers last week were dumbfounded in the first half, down 17-0. We talked about that. But then they came back. They had a 17-0 third quarter. They bounced back. They looked like maybe the West Virginia offense that we've known since last year because they haven't really lost any key guys. They're really the same group from last year. But they should not be a 2-3 team. I think after losing to Tech last week, and they only lost to Oklahoma on a last-second field goal. Let's not forget that, folks. So I think after those losses, they're really going to come out here fiery. They're going to want to get a big win against a Baylor team that, people have said deserves to be ranked. They were ranked last week. So Baylor's already made their mark this season. It's time for West Virginia to make theirs. And they're going to want to come out and get on the board. They're going to score points. And Baylor's offense, they're bound to score points too. especially in a home game. So I think another reason for this pick is it is absurdly low. 44 points for an over-under in a Big 12 is crazy. Who remembers the days when they were all like 70, 80? It's absurdly low. I know Baylor's kind of in a quote-unquote new era per se, but it's still low for the Bears and low for the Mountaineers. But the reason it didn't go to tier 1 is because of the low number. It just scares me a little bit. So that was my decision making on why this one is in tier 2. But anyways, now this is what we've all been waiting for. My absolute favorite picks. We have quite a few more actually than we normally do. I usually only go with about 3 tier 1 picks, but I think this is our most populated section this week. I have 6 of these bad boys. Whew. All right, one sec. Let's get into it. All right. Whew, had to get my sip there, you know? All right, first one. Like I said, whenever I decide my tier 1 picks, sometimes they just scream to me and they're like, oh, that's a lock. That is a lock. This is one of them. Georgia Tech -4 on the road at Duke. This one feels eerily obvious. You know, it feels like everybody will be jumping on this line, and the public is heavily in favor with Georgia Tech. So that's the only reason I'm nervous. But I think in the grand scheme of things, this is insulting to be only 4-point favorites against Duke. Road game or not for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is going to do what they do best in this ball game. They're going to run the ball. Duke is really not a good football team if you look at it. But GT, back to that running offense, 18th ranked rushing offense against the 81st ranked rush defense with Duke. Don't let Duke's 3-2 record fool you. That is another reason I think this line might be there. Duke's 3-2 record, their only wins are against Kansas, a terrible, terrible Northwestern team, and North Carolina A&T. Yeah, North Carolina A&T. So Kansas and NC A&T are basically both FCS teams. Let's be honest. Northwestern is playing on the level of an FCS team this year. And then also, sorry, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. Also, in their season opener against Charlotte, the Blue Devils lost. Come on, bro. You can't be losing to Charlotte. I guess at the same time, Georgia Tech lost to NIU, but they've bounced back. They've showed that they can at least compete. They competed with Clemson. They upset UNC, but then last week they got blown out by Pittsburgh. So they've been back and forth all over the place. But no, I think Georgia Tech is by far the better team. They're going to run all over Duke. They're going to run down their throat in this one. So take the Yellow Jackets -4. All right. Next up, I teased this one in my intro, but I'm taking Iowa money line, not the spread. Iowa money line -130 versus Penn State at home. I think the home field advantage is going to play a huge, huge factor in this game. If this was at Happy Valley, I might be picking opposite. But Penn State has had 4 straight home games up until this point, and this is going to be a rude awakening for their first road test. Even though I picked Penn State in their whiteout game, looking back at that, it actually kind of makes me more confident for this Iowa pick, because even with that atmosphere, you know, Penn State had some shaky moments in there. They only won by 8 points. They still covered the spread, covered that pick whenever I had it. But I don't know. They only beat them by 1 possession, and Auburn has looked shaky since then. So I think I give the edge in this ball game, though, for quarterback to Sean Clifford over Petrus is his name, the Iowa quarterback. But I still think that Clifford's not good enough to get past the Iowa defense. And the Iowa defense is good enough to put their offense in position to score points, even with how slow and rough that offense is. This could legitimately be like a 10-7 ball game. So I'm 100% staying away from the over-under, which I think is like 40.5. But I do love the Hawkeyes money line. One of my favorite picks. Home field advantage is going to be huge in this. And as we said before, Big Ten, it's going to be the most entertaining conference of the year. This is one of the biggest matchups already. Number 3 versus number 4, a top 5 matchup. So you better be watching this game. I forget what time it starts. I think it's actually a 2:30 game. So everybody will have their eyes on this one in the country. Next up, we're going to the SEC. LSU at Kentucky, that dark horse we mentioned before. I'm riding with the under of 52. Who would have thought at this point, Kentucky Wildcats would be 5-0 and competing in the SEC East. Not me, that's for sure. They've turned it around, but I mentioned their defense at the beginning of the episode. Their defense is really, 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 really good. They are third against the pass, fourth against the run, and they have the number 1 overall defense in yards per play allowed. Meanwhile, LSU is 76th offensively in yards per play. So that is a good sign for the under. I think this is going to be a very slow-paced ball game. Kentucky's defense is going to set the tone. They're going to control the pace of play, and 52 is a pretty average, I'd say, over-under for Kentucky. Kentucky's been hitting unders that were below 50, even in the 46, 47 range. They've been having 27-point ball games. They had like a 16-10 outing against South Carolina. It was 20-13 against Florida. So I'm rolling with the low-scoring, slow-paced ball game. I think this is going to be a close game, but I think Kentucky should win, and they should win in a low-scoring, kind of boring game. All right. Second to last pick, we got Michigan, the Wolverines. I've been riding high on Harbaugh and his boys this year. We're taking Michigan -3 on the road at Nebraska. The Cornhuskers are undefeated against the spread, and that stops now. Michigan's coming to town to put a damper on their parade. I am terrified a bit because of how close the spread is. Michigan really should be favored in this game by like 6. But regardless, we're going to ride with the Wolverines until they give us a reason not to. Been high on them all year. Still high on them. I really don't see Michigan losing a game until either Penn State or Ohio State maybe. But a couple episodes ago, I made the bold prediction that Michigan's going to upset Ohio State this year at the end of the year. And I still am holding myself to that prediction. I still do believe it. But Nebraska is, I think that 5-0 record against the spread has really, I don't know, it's given them a boost here. It's given them an overcorrection on the market. Michigan should win this game. Michigan were underdogs in their last game against Wisconsin. We had them last week, and they won by 21 points, 38-17. So they should win I think they should win this one by 10 plus even against Nebraska. But the Cornhuskers have been playing everybody close. So I will proceed with caution, but I think Michigan, 7th ranked rush offense in the country. They should have their way with Nebraska. I like that one a lot, but I will say proceed with caution, which I don't say on a lot of tier 1 picks, but proceed with caution on that. All righty. That brings us to our last pick of this weekend's card. We're staying in the state of Michigan, and we're going with Michigan State this time. We already have one pick on this game, but it's back in tier 3. We took Michigan State -5, but I'm going with Sparty team total over 27.5 at Rutgers. So if you're not familiar with team total bets, instead of the over-under for combined points, team total is literally I only need Michigan State and Michigan State only to score more than 27.5 points. So 4 touchdowns, and that's a winning pick for us. So they are Michigan State is 35th currently in the country for plays per minute, and they had an impressive 10.9 passing yards per attempt a week ago, which I really like in terms of this, whereas Rutgers has given up quite a few points other than their one low-scoring fluke in Syracuse. They gave up 52 against Ohio State last week. So I think this low total is a gift because there's a chance of rain in the forecast. So the over-under has been affected by that. I think the game total set at 50. I would also like the whole game over-under of 50.5. I think Rutgers can score a couple touchdowns. But I am more confident that Michigan State gets at least 28 points in this one. This is not the normal Mike D'Antonio offense that we're used to. We're used to a ground and pound, in-your-face type game plan. But they've been more gung-ho this year. They're averaging 37.8 points per game. And so to ask for them to get 10 points less than their average, that seems like a gift to me. I'm taking Sparty to hit their team total this weekend to round out this week's card on Ryan's Ramble. Oh, wow, we are at 45 minutes. I just checked. All right, well, that rounds out our card. Whether you tail or fade, you ride with my picks or not, that is up to you. But as always, I would love to hear what you guys have to say, what you guys have planned for this weekend, what picks you're making, anything that went right, went wrong last week. let me know in the comments. I love seeing that. Love hearing some feedback from you guys. So as always, appreciate everybody for listening. Make sure to check me out on social media. I'm over at RyanBennell8 on Twitter. If you also want to see more of my content, you can find links in my bio on Twitter and everything. I have a couple podcasts and more blogs, everything like that. So check me out on social media. Shout out Frogs of War family, as always, for this opportunity. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again next week with another betting card. But for now, have a safe trip. If you're a Horned Frog fan going out to Lubbock, best of luck. Safe travels going on the way to Lubbock. Weird stuff happens there, man. So let's go. Let's go get a win. Let's go get a win. Hopefully the Horned Frogs can come back with a winning record. All right. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.